The family meeting was called for 6 p.m. sharp. Everyone gathered around Mom's dining room table like we were conducting serious business. Dad had printed agendas. Mom had prepared her important occasion dinner. My cousins Jake and Emma drove in from the suburbs, phones already out to document whatever windfall they expected. As you all know, Dad began, adjusting his reading glasses with the gravity of a Supreme Court justice. Grandma's estate has been providing monthly distributions to help support the family. It's time we formalized how these funds are allocated. I sat quietly at the far end of the table, manila folder of financial documents in my lap, watching my family prepare to divide money they thought came from our deceased grandmother's inheritance. Grandma had indeed left a modest inheritance when she passed 2 years ago. About $45,000 total, split among her children and grandchildren. What my family didn't know was that the monthly estate distributions they'd been receiving for the past 18 months, totaling over $180,000, had been coming from my investment accounts. The monthly amount has been consistent, Dad continued, consulting his spreadsheet. $10,000 each month from Grandma's investment portfolio. But we need to be strategic about future distributions. My cousin Jake leaned forward eagerly. How much are we looking at long-term? I mean, what's the total estate value? Based on the monthly distributions, we're estimating somewhere between $800,000 to $1.2 million, Dad replied confidently. Grandma was more financially savvy than we realized. I almost choked on my water. They'd reverse-engineered an imaginary estate value from money I'd been transferring from my own cryptocurrency and stock investments. Emma's graduate school costs are increasing, Dad announced, pulling out his allocation charts. I'm proposing we increase her monthly distribution to $2,500. Jake's wedding is next year, so he should get $3,000 monthly to build up the wedding fund. Emma clapped her hands together. Oh my God, this is perfect timing. I was stressed about tuition for my PhD program. And Sarah, Dad continued, barely glancing in my direction, since you're still figuring out your career path, we'll maintain your current $1,500 monthly until you establish more stable employment. My unstable employment consisted of freelance consulting work that allowed me to manage my rapidly growing investment portfolio. What started as $50,000 in savings 3 years ago had grown to over $800,000 through careful cryptocurrency timing, tech stock investments, and some lucky startup acquisitions. I watched them carve up my money like a Thanksgiving turkey, each person calculating their annual take from what they believed was Grandma's mysterious financial empire. How is Grandma's money even generating this much monthly income? I asked quietly. Her financial advisor set up a sophisticated investment strategy before she passed, Mom explained. Very conservative, but the returns have been surprisingly good. The advisor handles everything automatically. There was no financial advisor. There was no investment strategy. There was just me, transferring money from my Coinbase and Fidelity accounts to a checking account I'd set up with Grandma's name still on it, then distributing monthly payments to keep my struggling family afloat. It had started innocently 18 months ago. Dad had been laid off. Mom's part-time job barely covered groceries. Jake was drowning in credit card debt from unemployment. Emma was considering dropping out of graduate school because she couldn't afford tuition. I'd offered to help directly, but Dad's pride wouldn't accept charity from his daughter who worked on computers and wasn't making real money. So I'd created the fiction of ongoing estate distributions, letting them believe Grandma's modest inheritance was somehow generating substantial monthly income. Actually, I said, opening my folder, I've been reviewing some financial documents and there might be some complications with the current arrangement. What kind of complications? Dad asked, his confident expression faltering. Well, I've been in touch with a financial advisor about my own investments, and they raised some questions about the estate distributions. This was true. Marcus Chin, my investment manager at Wellington Private Wealth, had been helping me optimize my portfolio for the past year. During our last meeting, I'd mentioned the family financial support I'd been providing, and he'd suggested some tax implications I should consider. Questions about documentation, tax compliance, proper estate management protocols. My advisor wants to speak with whoever is managing Grandma's investment portfolio. The table went quiet. Dad looked uncomfortable. Well, that's handled by professionals. We don't really deal with the day-to-day management, Right, but my advisor needs to coordinate some things. Tax season is coming up, and apparently there are some reporting requirements I need to handle for my portion of the distributions. I pulled out my phone. Actually, he said he could join us by video call right now to explain the requirements. Would that be helpful? Before anyone could object, I was dialing Marcus's number. I texted him earlier to explain the situation and ask if he could help me reveal the truth to my family in a professional setting. Sarah, Marcus answered on the second ring, his voice warm and professional. Is this a good time for our family call? Perfect timing. I have everyone here. I turned the phone so the camera faced the table. Marcus, this is my family. Everyone, this is Marcus Chin, my investment manager at Wellington Private Wealth. Marcus appeared on screen in his office, looking appropriately authoritative in his suit and tie. Good evening, everyone. Sarah asked me to join tonight to discuss some important matters regarding recent financial distributions. Dad straightened up, trying to look like a man who regularly dealt with investment professionals. Yes, we appreciate you taking the time. We were just discussing the ongoing distributions from Sarah's grandmother's estate. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. Yes, about that. I've been reviewing Sarah's account activity, and I need to clarify something important for tax and legal purposes. He paused, glancing at some papers off screen. The monthly distributions you've been receiving $10,000 per month for the past 18 months. Those funds have been coming directly from Sarah's personal investment accounts. The silence at the table was deafening. I'm sorry, what? Emma asked, her voice small. Sarah has been funding these monthly payments herself, Marcus continued matter-of-factly. From her cryptocurrency investments and stock portfolio, which has performed exceptionally well over the past 3 years. Her current portfolio value is approximately $847,000. Dad's face had gone pale. But, the estate distributions. There are no estate distributions beyond the original inheritance, which was distributed in full 2 years ago. Sarah created the monthly payment structure to provide family support while allowing everyone to maintain dignity. Marcus pulled up what appeared to be account statements on his end. Sarah's been transferring $10,000 monthly from her investment accounts to cover family expenses. Total outflow over 18 months, $180,000. Mom looked like she might faint. Sarah, but we thought. The tax implications are significant, Marcus continued professionally. Sarah needs to properly document these transfers. Technically, they're gifts, which means gift tax filings are required above certain thresholds. Jake was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. You're telling us Sarah has been paying for everything? The wedding fund, grad school, the house repairs. All of it, Marcus confirmed. Sarah's investment portfolio has been the sole source of what you believed were estate distributions. But how? Dad asked weakly. She's a freelance consultant. Marcus smiled slightly. Sarah is one of our most sophisticated clients. She started with a $50,000 investment 3 years ago. Through strategic cryptocurrency positions and tech stock investments, she's built substantial wealth. Her consulting work actually involves advising startups on digital strategy, which has provided both income and equity opportunities. Why didn't you tell us? Emma asked, tears in her eyes. I finally spoke up. Because when I offered to help directly, Dad said you wouldn't accept charity from your daughter who wasn't making real money. So I found a way to help that preserved everyone's pride. However, Marcus said, his tone becoming more serious, this arrangement needs to change immediately for several reasons. What reasons? Dad asked quietly. First, the tax implications are becoming complex. Second, Sarah's portfolio has grown to the point where she needs to diversify her giving strategies. Third, and most importantly, Sarah is planning some major life changes that will affect her liquidity. I took a breath. I'm buying a house in Seattle. I'm also investing in a new startup that's going to require significant capital. The monthly family distributions need to end. When? Jake asked, panic creeping into his voice. Immediately, Marcus answered. In fact, we've already begun restructuring Sarah's accounts to accommodate her new investment strategy. Dad looked stricken. But Emma's tuition, the wedding, the mortgage, will need to be handled through traditional means, Marcus said firmly. Loans, payment plans, budgeting. Sarah has been extraordinarily generous, but she cannot continue to fund everyone's lifestyle indefinitely. Emma started crying openly. I can't afford graduate school without the monthly payments. These are exactly the conversations that should have happened 18 months ago, Marcus said, not unkindly. Instead of building sustainable financial plans, everyone became dependent on what they believed was passive inheritance income. Mom finally found her voice. Sarah, honey, we had no idea. We would never have accepted so much money if we'd known it was coming from you. That's exactly why I didn't tell you, I said. Because you would have refused help and struggled unnecessarily. But we've been living like... Dad trailed off, the full implications hitting him. We've been spending money you earned while treating you like you were unsuccessful. While allocating the smallest monthly distribution to the person actually funding everything, Marcus pointed out. $1,500 monthly to Sarah while planning $3,000 for Jake and $2,500 for Emma. From her own money. The shame on everyone's faces was palpable. What happens now? Jake asked quietly. Marcus looked at his notes. Sarah's final transfer will be this month's payment. After that, everyone needs to transition to independent financial management. Sarah will continue her investment strategy without the monthly outflow of $10,000. I'm sorry, Emma said, looking directly at me. We're so sorry. We had no idea. The wedding, Jake started, will need to be scaled to match your actual budget, I said gently. Not an imaginary inheritance. Dad was shaking his head slowly. We've been such fools. Planning our lives around money you were earning while dismissing your career as unstable. Marcus cleared his throat. I should mention one more thing. Sarah's been documenting all transfers meticulously. For tax purposes, but also because she wanted to ensure transparency when this conversation eventually happened. How long have you been planning to tell us? Dad asked. I wasn't planning to tell you, I admitted. I was content to keep helping quietly. But when you started dividing up imaginary future inheritance money and cutting my own allowance from my own funds, it became absurd. We're going to pay you back, Jake said immediately. Every penny. With what? I asked, not unkindly. You're unemployed. Emma's a graduate student. Mom and Dad are barely covering their expenses. Marcus interjected. Repayment isn't the goal here. The goal is ensuring everyone understands their actual financial situation and plans accordingly. I looked around the table at my family, people I loved who had unknowingly been living off my success while treating me like I was the least successful person in the room. I'm not cutting you off to punish you, I said. I'm cutting you off because I have my own life to build. And because you all need to learn to manage your actual resources instead of planning around imaginary money. The dinner ended quietly. No one knew what to say. Marcus signed off professionally, promising to send me the tax documentation I'd need. 3 weeks later, I was packing for Seattle when Jake called. Sarah? It's Jake. I wanted to update you on some things. How are you managing? I asked. Honestly, it's been terrifying. But also, clarifying. We've had to completely restructure our wedding budget. We're doing something much smaller, much more realistic. And it's actually going to be more meaningful. Emma dropped out of the PhD program, but she got a job at a nonprofit that's paying for her master's degree completion. She's actually happier. And Mom and Dad? They're adjusting. Dad got a new job. Pays less than his old one, but it's steady. They're learning to budget properly for the first time in years. I waited. Sarah, I know you don't owe us anything else. But I wanted you to know that we get it now. What you did for us and how we took it for granted. We're proud of you. We should have been proud of you the whole time. Thank you for saying that. Also, Jake continued, we're not going to ask for more money. But, would you be okay if we visited you in Seattle sometime? We'd like to see your new house. And your new life. I'd like that, I said and realized I meant it. The monthly transfers stopped. My family learned to live within their means. I bought a beautiful house in Seattle with a view of the Sound and continued building my investment portfolio. Grandma's actual inheritance had been $45,000. My imaginary inheritance that I created for them was $180,000. But the real inheritance, the lesson about independence, honesty and family relationships, was worth far more than either amount. The credit card stopped working, but the family relationships started working better than they had in years.